Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this morning we are meeting with Damon Clarke. Thank you so much for being with us, Damon. I totally appreciate and honor your presence. And he is the founder of Talent Optimizers. And so he facilitates, retains, develops leadership and does leadership strategies for various companies, and we're going to let us tell him about this. Damon, could you please share with our listeners what your background is and what your role is at Talent Optimizers, please?
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here, by the way, and thank you for inviting me on. So my background is I spent, I think, 15 years in the tech space in sales and marketing for companies like Fujitsu Siemens, Acer Computers, and Dell EMC. And then I was obsessed with training and personal development. So during that journey, I was really lucky because we those companies are big companies. I invested in their talents and we had some amazing training. And I really truly got inspired by some of that training and really wanted to spin out on my own and do team development and leadership training. So I did that in about '09. I set up a company focused on team development and we did that journey is a whole different story. So I ended up owning some climbing gyms and an island where we did survival courses on, but predominantly the main business was team development, and we used behavioral testing and worked with leadership teams. And I sold that company about 12 years, 10 years ago now, and moved to the US to live just outside Boston to be closer to my wife's family. And I eventually ended up at an amazing company called Predictive Index, who are a software and consulting company, and they work with behavioral science to build winning teams and put the right people in the right seats. So I was there for a few years training consultants, and it was the best company ever. And eventually, I was like looking for the next job within that company, and they said, "Well, we don't have anything internally for you, but how about you take these clients, these direct clients, and spin out on your own?" Because they had some global customers, because they sold direct and through a channel of partners. And they kind of supported me to spin out on my own. And I've been a Predictive Index partner now for 4 years. We're one of the fastest growing partners with over 65 odd customers across the globe. And yeah, and we, as you said, we focus on basically supporting, getting the right people in the right seats, building winning teams, and aligning talent with strategy. So we do a little bit of strategy, but for the most part, we build talent strategies and work with talent to get them to effectively execute strategy.
So fascinating. It sounds like you knew what you wanted and you aligned everything with what you wanted. I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit about the mission and values of Talent Optimizers, please?
Yeah, that would be a pleasure. And you may have to stop me as I kind of maybe go off as tangents because I really enjoy this question. Though our mission, vision, values was the first thing we did. And we also do a mission, vision, values workshop with our clients. And we find that many companies that aren't really intentional, where they develop values, but aren't really intentional about actually embracing them and embedding them and making them kind of part of habitual behavior. So that's the first place we started.
Oh,
And our mission was, to basically, align talent and strategy. And our values, we built our values out and they were quite personal to us, but we really embraced, we actually stole someone else's value or mission, actually. We built our values out and then we went back to the mission and we actually stole Predictive Index's mission, which is better work, better world. And we're very honest about stealing it, but it just resonated with us so much. So, particularly in my early career when I probably wasn't in the right seat. I got a nice blog article I wrote regarding doing a marketing job I was absolutely terrible at. And behaviorally, I just wasn't a good fit for that job. But I didn't know this at the time. So the result was I worked late, worked crazy hours, probably drank too much alcohol in the evenings. when I just behaviorally wasn't suited to that role. And so what we can do now with behavioral science is we can put the right people in the right seats. We can get people communicating better. We can get teams thriving. So going back to that mission, better work, better world, we genuinely believe we can make workplaces better for everybody, and that creates a better world. So I told you I'd waffle on a bit, but that's really important to us.
No, that's perfect. That's the staple of an organization, right? So could you tell us a little bit about your signature program that you offer your clients, Damon?
Yeah, so I mean, our main focus is using neuro and behavioral science within the workplace to build winning teams, but um, we're quite broad in the fact that our job is to get talent executing strategy, and that's quite a big subject. So to do that, it's not something one person can do. So we bring in a lot of consultants because when we think about people strategy, we're talking DEI, we're talking comps and benefits, reward and recognition, training and development. So it's a big kind of broad subject. But what we typically find is there's some main themes going on with leadership teams and organizations, particularly around trust and communication.
Yeah.
So we've got a few products and we kind of bring in consultants and specialist consultants in certain areas. But our main focus, I'd say kind of 60-70% of our work is we utilize a tool called Predictive Index, the one I spoke about earlier. And that's a science-based solution looking at people's behavior, individual and team behavior. And we can even map team behavior strategy and forecast where teams may struggle to execute strategy because they're not behaviorally hardwired to be good at that area. So that's our main product. It's a software platform. It's a SaaS platform, and most of our clients are on that. And yeah, helps with trust, communication, conflict, succession planning, conflict resolution, team to team friction, lots of things. So that's the main product. And then we do use a lot of tools to diagnose engagement and health because we like to really think about data. How can we use data to measure not only return on investment, because a lot of training programs are difficult to measure return on investment, but so we use employee surveys and pulse surveys, but also use data to understand where to focus. So we often use five behaviors, which is a team assessment tool looking at trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. So we often use that to assess leadership teams and engagement surveys to assess the broad organization. So there are our main tools, I'd say, predictive index and five behaviors.
Thank you for that. That's very descriptive. And could you tell us a little story just to make it more tangible for our listeners on the value that this provides to the collective or a potential client, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk a little bit broader, and then maybe as I
Yeah.
do that, I'll come up with a good example. We got a few. So quite often, we're brought in because of dysfunction. So quite often, either there's leadership dysfunction or there's a wider challenge in the organization, particularly around retention. Or maybe we've done an employment survey and the engagement scores are really low. So I think 8 out of 10 times we're brought in because of those reasons. Occasionally we get brought in because the organization's a really people first organization and are just very proactive, investing in people. And there the organization's growing and thriving, by the way. So that's how we normally get brought in. Now, we typically like to work at leadership teams. And what we find with leadership teams, there's very common challenges in those leadership teams. The first one being that we often don't have a robust way of developing, implementing, and tracking strategy. And that coincidentally is a more important issue from your talents. That mission, vision, values, and operating system to run your strategy is the most important thing to get right. My job predominantly is to actually get the talent to execute that. So that's one challenge we often see at companies don't have organizations don't have that kind of way of developing that strategy. Often there's no commitment to leadership development. The way they approach development is they have an offsite and someone says, oh, we should do some training or some team building. That's not how you focus team development or leadership development. It's not strategic, it's not data driven. So often that's another common problem. They don't have a strong leadership development program. And leadership teams don't just magically happen. You need
Right.
to work at them. And then there's some other things, what come down to, not running effective meetings, not understanding good communication within that leadership team, etc. But that's how we're often brought in. And, the examples, I'm trying to think of a good example. A client I recently worked with was, they had had an employee survey, very poor results, and we were trying to figure out why. And we ran a workshop to try and identify, and we kind of took a step back and looked at the leadership team, and we explored, what they were kind of struggling with in the organization. And they had I'll say the polite word, a get stuff done award. I won't say the rude word because my mother would be appalled if I used a curse word on a podcast. But they had a Get Stuff Done award, and it wasn't resonating. And people, they were struggling. Well, people don't stay late. People aren't working weekends. People aren't committed to their job. And what we realized when we kind of broke out and brainstormed, and before we did that, we talked about psychological safety and we talked about vulnerability based trust. And we did some work, some kind of icebreakers on talking about what destroys teams. And what destroys teams is often what we call is artificial harmony or silent disagreement. So we kind of set that scene, but coming back, we brainstormed, and someone who would normally not speak up, within that leadership team, and the reason why they wouldn't is behaviorally, they like to reflect on decisions. Behaviorally, they're hardwired not to enjoy brainstorming. They like data. And they said, well, it's because it's not resonating with anyone. It's just not a fit. People don't even like it. Anyway, after talking about that, we looked at the behavior, and the team were a very dominant, we call it task-driven team. So the majority of them were comfortable with ambiguity, super competitive. And we had something going on called magnified behavior within that team. They were all going, okay, well, let's commit to more projects. We've already decided our projects for a year, but let's just add a few more on, and they find a way to get them done. The challenge was the teams below were hardwired behaviorally very differently, and they liked to plan. They weren't comfortable with ambiguity or things put on their plate at the last minute. So we kind of unpicked it and discussed why this problem was happening, and looked at the leadership behavior, and then looked at the wider team behavior. And as a result, we went through action planning, and we decided to publicly abolish the Get Stuff Done award and replace it with the Energize Award. Now, what the Energize Award was, for people to recognize taking time off and, breathing, reflecting, which we discussed earlier, and coming back to work re-energized. Now, the leadership team hated it, but because they'd like just get stuff done, but they understood why that was going to resonate more with a wider organization. So they took commitments to like take Friday afternoons off, write an email saying I'm turning my cell phone off, I'm turning my email off, and I'm having Friday night off for some what's the word, for a reflection afternoon or some self care, which they didn't enjoy. They were like, "Oh, this," and of course they didn't. But it was gonna resonate with the teams below, so we replaced it with that different award. And it's going back. Oh, this is probably 18 months ago now. We the re-engagement scores were much healthier, and everyone's happier, and it's going great, and we're still involved. We're now doing more work in there. So I've not chatted them for a while, but we've got some workshops coming up. So I guess we were invited back and doing more work, and that all started from that exercise.
Wow. So just changing the name of one award made an entire difference in
Well,
the entire cascade of the organization. It
well, it
sounds
wasn't
like.
what wasn't the name. I mean, it was a totally different recognition award. It
and
was about
energy.
energizing rather
Yeah,
than doing more work. Yeah. But
yeah.
but the engagement scores went up. So I mean,
Wow.
ironically, was it, I don't know what the word is for this, but ironically, they asked for teams to do less work, take more time off, but then they got more productivity and engagement.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I was wondering if you've noticed any major shifts that you're seeing in your industry, Damon.
Yeah, I mean, I think when this question gets asked at the moment, everyone talks about AI.
Oh, a
And
lot.
I don't want to talk about AI because I feel it's a distraction to get the basics right, particularly when it comes to talent. So although we're doing some great stuff with AI and there's some great progress, I'm going to avoid talking about that. And I'm going to talk about, um, companies needing to transition to a people first organization, particularly in today's environment, thinking about the
Mhm.
people and what we still find in leadership and executive teams that sometimes HR aren't even invited. Often HR is tactical, it's not strategic. So what we're noticing is companies are slowly but surely
Mhm.
realizing that they need to shift their mentality to a people first organization. And to do that, they need data. They need to, put a talent initiative on that scorecard, on that, that strategic scorecard they review every month, and start kind of escalating talent to be a priority conversation, as much as revenue and, costs, etc.
I love it because I mean, technically, talent is the base that will provide you results or outcomes in your revenue, right? So
All
it's
goals are missed because of people. But
mm,
then I would urge leaders to think about when they do those leadership meetings, you know, if they're doing strategic meetings, there's another issue we find that companies aren't still doing tactical update meetings, not separate strategic meetings. But if they
mhm,
are doing those meetings, is there a talent um, data point on that scorecard? And if
mhm.
not, why not? When we survey all these CEOs and we list out those 10 problems in the Harvard Business Review or Forbes or whatever survey we're looking at, the majority of CEO challenges all come down to talent. Yet there's a massive gap in the conversation on talents within executive meetings.
I see. And is this something that you're seeing in every one of the clients that approach you?
Well, hopefully our clients are making that shift. So out of our 70 odd clients, yeah, we still got some who, we've got some in various stages. And when we kind of work with them, we go into the leadership team and try and kind of get that fixed. Because if we get the leadership team more people focused and more strategic, it kind of filters down the organization. So our clients are in various stages of that, and we do have some clients who are just super proactive. Who and are just so I'm going to talk about Virgin Voyages. So we work with Virgin Voyages, and they are just the talent team is huge. They put so much focus on their people, supporting their people, developing their people. So they never came to us because they had any problems. They came to us because they were just a step above anyone else in terms of thinking about how they look after their employees. So they're, one of my favorite clients to work for because they're just so proactive and crushing it. I noticed for the companies who are people first are the ones scaling and doing great.
That is so neat. And where I was wondering, are there any challenges that you and your organization, Talent Optimizers, is currently focused on for growth
In terms of us or our clients?
in terms of you?
Okay, so in our organization, That's again, I want to avoid myself waffling too much because it's such a fun subject. This industry we're in is tough. There are so many coaches out there and facilitators. It's a really fun job. And what I've noticed is some of the best facilitators and consultants aren't successful because it's a kind of lot of independent workers. And some of the not so good consultants, facilitators are successful because they're very good at sales and marketing. So what we find is the market is flooded with coaches and not so many people to coach. I mean, coaching is one part of our business. You know, we do a fair amount of executive coaching, but we find there's a lot of coaches, but not many people to coach. So the market is quite interesting. It always fascinates me. Um, but for us in terms of our kind of suppose challenges growing, um, we've kind of moved. We're an organization, so we have multiple coaches, multiple facilitators, and we've kind of gone past that stage. And we have a slightly different business model for most, where we sell a software solution, and we train for companies to support themselves. So rather than bringing in consultants all the time, and some of our clients do, we still go in and stuff, but for the most part, we try and upskill their internal team and we use software to do that. So our business model is a bit different because we get a kind of recurring revenue from the software, and we're very much locked in on our clients and retainers. Um, so our challenge, and we'll come back to a question, is probably being patient. And sometimes I've got to say, okay, let's turn off. Like I don't have to work till 8 o'clock at night, or I don't have to get up at 5 and work for 4 hours, because the only difference that's going to make is speed of growth. And at the moment, we're quite good. We're quite happy. We're paying the bills, getting lots of time off to see the kids and do all their sports and stuff, and our team members are kind of happy. So I think patience is our challenge, is to reminding ourselves that we don't have to grow as crazy as our aspirations are, and just to calm down a bit and just watch the costs and grow a little bit more slower but less stressful. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I tend to be a little bit impulsive myself. And I think that's an excellent characteristic to work on. So I was wondering with that answer, Damon, where do you see talent optimizers in 6 months to a year from now?
Oh, well, if you look at our plan, I should be able to tell you exactly. I'm actually, my behavioral style is not a planner, so I'm what we call a predictive index maverick. So not naturally that organized, quite high level, but because I know what I'm like behaviorally, I'm therefore deliberately overcompensate and be very structured plan. So we use a system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, to run our business. So it's a way of setting kind of 10-year goal, 5-year goal, 3-year goal, and quarterly targets. And we run off a performance management solution. So it's all in our data. So in terms of, was it a year you said? Or what was
Six
the time
months to
period?
a year.
6 months to
Yes.
a year. So we have a revenue target. We have a revenue target for a year, which we're currently, it's January. We're on track for this month. We had a really good year last year, and I've actually don't think we're going to do as well as we did last year. But we set our targets, so we have a very fine revenue target. But what's more importantly is that we have a people target. So I talked earlier that we need to have people targets. We actually have one. So we have three main buckets in our strategy. We have revenue, and we've got a whole load of things to do to hit that revenue. We have people. So that's more about avoiding me doing work I don't enjoy because I've not because I'm selfish. I think a lot of people when they start off going, well, I'm only going to do stuff I enjoy. There's particularly as you start, you have to do all the stuff. You have to do stuff you don't enjoy. So I've
Hmm.
been doing that for 4 years. Um, but now it's time to slowly come out of it. So I need to kind of jettison the stuff I don't enjoy and focus more time on the stuff I enjoy, like podcasts. That was part of my plan is to do more of these. So we have a very focused people plan for both me and Scott and Anne Shilton, and we use a lot of other consultants and agencies. And then the last one's client success. We have 60 clients. We find we don't have to really focus on new business too much. We just need to crush our client success. So we have a GTM director, and we split obviously our growth into expansions, retention, and new business. But our main focus is on retention. And we
Yeah.
find if we really look after our clients, everything else works out. So yeah, there are we've got very free keep KPIs within those free targets. We track them every single week on Monday morning. And yeah, that people one's important. I get to do less, and we've already this quarter is I've so I told you, you're asking really good questions because normally I try and be really concise, and I know I'm waffling. Um, so part of our quarterly target was to define roles and responsibilities, and I got a demotion, or I got demoted.
Mm.
It sounds crazy. So we promoted someone in our organization to be GTM director, and now I'm working for him. Which makes no
Cool.
sense because I'm the owner of a company. But what that enables me to do is to do some of the fun stuff I enjoy,
Yeah.
particularly around marketing and video and content. So my job is to supply him with leads, and so yeah, I got demoted. I'm still doing a bit of facilitation and some leadership stuff, but yeah, I took a demotion. So yeah, that we've already started working towards that people plan to make sure I'm doing stuff I enjoy more.
That's great. I think that's so important to delegate the things that don't really resonate with you, right? Or don't align with you. So, um, I just want to tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, if I may. So, if you need to reach Damon Clarke, and that's DamonClark, you can reach him at talentoptimizers.com. And Damon, I was wondering, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Oh, I wish you've asked such good questions. Final words of wisdom. I'm gonna lean on my 12-year-old here who's still teaching me stuff, and that's to embrace mistakes and failures.
Mm.
He had a tough ski race season last year because he wiped out, which happens in ski racing, but he wiped out on a triple header, so it meant that he couldn't win the league, which he'd been used to winning for a few years, and it was really tough, and he was demotivated. But he's come back this year, training harder, doing more, hitting the gym more, and he's currently kind of up there, number one at the moment. So I'm going to kind of embrace what he's teaching me, and that's if you fail, it's fine. Just learn from it and move on.
That's so beautiful. And wishing him the best of seasons.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with our listeners. I totally appreciated you being here and that we were speaking with Damon Clarke. And I wish you a very beautiful day, Damon.
Thank you. I'll do my best.
Thank you.